All right, mate, how you doing? Welcome back to another video. We've had breaking news here at the hashtag HQ, and that is Gareth Southgate has officially resigned as England manager. My voice, by the way, is gone still from the final I was lucky enough to be at just a few days ago. And we're going to unpack Gareth Southgate's decision and what it means for the future of England football, how we look at Gareth's tenure as England manager, what we need going forward, whether it was the right decision, etc. But yes, first of all, I was lucky enough to be at the semi-final and the final. Epic road trip down there for the final. Last minute ticket came up on Friday night. We left at 2 a.m. on the Saturday. We drove 1,000 kilometres, got to Berlin Saturday night, and obviously the final was there on Sunday. Lost my voice in the process, drove back yesterday. And yeah, I mean, scenes of jubilation when Cole Palmer scored that goal. I'll show you them now. I think that was when my voice officially went. And for a few minutes, we were on absolute cloud nine. But I think personally, as soon as Spain needed to score again, they were able to go and do that. And I think that they're just superior. We have to acknowledge that. This isn't a match report. This isn't a reaction to the final. This is about Gareth. But I think it all kind of links into it, really. And so my conclusion on the tournament is that it was a good tournament from England's perspective. Getting to the final and coming second is pretty decent when you're not the best team in the tournament, and we're not. Maybe that's a bigger problem, though. Why aren't we one of the better teams in the tournament or the best team in the tournament? Because we arguably had the best or one of the best squads, and that's where this kind of disparity between the quality of our players and the quality of our performances has been created, and some of that has to fall on Gareth Southgate's shoulders. You know, I have been a huge proponent of Gareth Southgate on this channel and other channels and other appearances I've made for many, many, many years. I still am a huge fan of the man. I think he's an exceptional man. I think he's a different kind of man in a sport and a world and an industry that's dominated with a lot of macho egos, and toxicity, quite frankly. And he is the perfect antidote to that. And that's one of the reasons I like him. And I think he's been an exemplary example, if that makes sense, of us to the rest of the world. For me, anyway. He's the sort of person that I've always been really happy representing the country I'm from because of his values and the way he carries himself and the way he makes his players feel. I think that's why the players are so fond of him. However, that did change a little bit this tournament for me. And I made a video after the group stage saying that, it's not good enough. And it wasn't. This was the first tournament where I actually lost faith with Gareth Southgate as a manager, unfortunately. And that's okay. That's okay. He's our longest serving manager. There's a reason they only last so long. There's a reason that presidents and prime ministers, well, maybe not prime ministers, but presidents can only have 8-year terms. People run their course. And I think that's what Gareth's done. And I think it is the right decision for him to move on. I think maybe the right decision for him as well as it being the right decision for England and what we want to achieve as a nation. I think that the criticism he received affected him in a big way this tournament, more than maybe ever. I think maybe going into this tournament, there was always a little bit of doubt about whether he has stayed too long. And I think that the criticism he received, some of it very personal. And yes, I criticised England this tournament and Gareth at times, and I stand by that, but I never made it personal. And I think some of the attacks have been really in poor taste. And I think Gareth's the kind of person that, is going to struggle with that. And I would too. It doesn't make him weak. It makes him human. And his humanity is why I've liked him so much, to be honest with you. But I think it's the right decision for him, the right decision for his family. But I think what we can't do is gloss over the shortcomings that England have shown this tournament, more than any of the other tournaments, in my opinion. You go back to the 2018 World Cup, we got to the semi-final, and you look at that squad, and that squad was so inferior to this current squad, in my opinion. No disrespect to these players, but a middle three of Henderson, Dele Alli, and Jesse Lingard, it doesn't match up against the middle three of Declan Rice, Kobbie Mainoo, and Jude Bellingham. Or Jude Bellingham was used in the front three in the end. It's a slightly different formation when we went to a back five, whatever. But the quality of this squad is better. And I think Gareth maybe was better at getting, dare I say, worse players to play well, getting them to buy into an ideology, a camaraderie in a camp, and become greater than the sum of their parts. And I think this is the most talented squad he's actually taken to a tournament, and it's actually some of the worst football we've played, maybe with the exception of the Netherlands game, where I think we were really strong at points, certainly in the first half, and I was really impressed, and we saw Phil Foden come alive, and some really good performances across the park. Generally, we've been poor. We haven't been good enough. Now, we're not the only country that suffered that fate this tournament. France massively underperformed, couldn't score from open play until the game against Spain. A lot of teams, Portugal, perhaps with a similar situation that we were suffering from an unfit Harry Kane, they were suffering from this sort of legacy Ronaldo who wasn't performing the way they used to, and they probably, I think, would have done a lot better if they just put Ramos up front for this tournament. But that was impossible to say until we saw what happened at the tournament. So listen, we're not the only good squad that's underperformed, but I think what we have to do is understand a few things. First of all, even if Gareth had won this tournament and we'd won the Euros, I think it would have been the right decision for him to move on. He would have moved on an absolute legend. He may get a knighthood anyway, to be honest, but he would have definitely got one if he'd won it. And he would have been able to answer all the critics perfectly. I said when we made the last video criticising him, I would have done an apology if we'd gone and won the thing, but he didn't win it. And that's what we've got to be honest about, because the way he played, particularly in the group stage and the early knockout stages, it's a effective way of getting through group games, you know, just making sure we at least draw the group stage games and getting deep in tournaments, but it's not entertaining, and football is an entertainment property ultimately. Now, because we haven't won a lot of tournaments, just one in 1966, we have generally been of a mentality was let's just get it over the line, let's just win one, and then we can start to try and do better. A bit like the West Ham mentality has been in recent years, and why we were, you know, and why I'm a big fan of David Moyes, despite the football being very basic, it won us a trophy. However, Gareth didn't win us a trophy, unfortunately. And was he a bit unlucky in that? Certainly in the Euros final against Italy. Certainly he was unlucky there. To lose on penalties is always unlucky. But we didn't deserve it against Spain. We didn't deserve, really, to be in the final this tournament based on performances. We had the unbelievable draw once again. I mean, Spain had to go through Germany. They had to go through France. You know, arguably both more tough opposition than England, I think. We did ourselves proud in the final. I'm not complaining about the performance. At that point, it was already too late for me. Once we got to the semis, it was just like, right, now I don't actually care about how we play. Can we just sneak away to win the trophy here? And obviously weren't able to do that. But that was the only way he could ultimately avoid criticism, is if he won it anyway, almost in the way that Portugal did in 2016, or dare I say Greece in 2004. Not entertaining, but just getting it over the line. The problem is we should be better. Now, why aren't we better? And this is where I don't think we should criticise Gareth Southgate so much for what he is. I think we have to look above Gareth Southgate. We have to actually look at the English football ecosystem for why we don't produce better English managers. Why don't we, guys? Think about it. An English manager has never won the Premier League. Is that not mad? An Englishman as manager has never won the Premier League. That's not a league that's been going for 5 years. We're 30 years into it now. How is that possible? We don't produce them. Statistically, you look at a country like Spain, I might get these numbers a little bit wrong. I read something online earlier, but it's something like they have like 13,000 UEFA A qualified coaches or high-level qualified coaches, and we have like 1,000. They have 10 times what we have. You know, there's a reason. Something's not working here. For whatever reason, good footballers don't transition to good coaches. We don't have the infrastructure. I personally have experienced within the running of my team, hashtag, how hard it is to get on some of these coaching courses as well. Maybe that infrastructure needs to improve within England to produce better coaches. Maybe we're tied up with this ideology of English football, which is this sort of tough tackling, you know, get us over the line. And it's less about technical skill and more about mentality and almost force. And that, as a result, has led us to sort of grow up and overlook the tactical element of football. Because for me, Gareth Southgate's now gone. Who are we getting in? And there's no other English manager that I'm convinced is going to be better than Gareth Southgate. I think Eddie Howe will be a front runner, and I'm a fan of Eddie Howe. But is he clearly that much more talented than Gareth Southgate? I'm not sure. I don't think there's any evidence to prove that. Graham Potter, I don't think there's any evidence to prove that necessarily. You know, what have those guys won, ultimately? You know, the managers that I would like to come in now, I mean, I think Pep Guardiola would be the dream. I don't think that's going to happen because I think he's very happy at Man City, although that could come to an end sooner rather than later. If these charges were to come against Man City and that was to mean there was significant punishments, maybe that would create this dream opportunity where he could come to England. He's definitely not going to manage Spain. We know he's a proud Catalonian. That won't happen. You know, outside of Pep, you know, could we get Klopp? I mean, a German managing England, bit controversial maybe, but I'd be okay with it. And I think Klopp would be the perfect man to get us motivated, to get the guys playing maybe a high pressing game that I don't think we did enough of this tournament. You know, people have talked about Jose Mourinho. He's obviously just gone to Fenerbahce, but also Is that a bit more defensive than we're looking for right now? I think what we've got to decide is, what do we want to be as a country? Like, you know, do we think because we haven't won something so long, we just need to get over the line? And that means we just try and do almost what Gareth Southgate has done this tournament and maybe a little bit in other tournaments and defend our way to victory and just be hard to beat? Or can we go out and play a high-pressing, entertaining game? And yeah, maybe we don't make the finals every time. Maybe we get knocked out in the quarters, but we go out swinging and entertaining, you know, because we're definitely capable of that. No one has a divine right to win a tournament. There's no guarantee. Great squads every year are going to lose tournaments. But we can definitely make sure that we play a certain way. And that's what I really applaud in the Spain way of doing things. If they'd lost to us, they still would have been the team of the tournament because they played football the way it should be played, in my opinion, entertaining, trying to beat teams rather than trying not to be beat. And, you know, the joy of us equalising with Cole Palmer was great, but like I said earlier, as soon as Spain needed to get back into the game, they did. They had an elite mentality, even without Rodri in the second half. There's a clear gulf in quality there, in my opinion. But not in players, but in team, shape, structure, you know, strategy. Clear gulf in quality there. So, yeah, thank you to Gareth Southgate. Huge fan of it. Really interested to see what he does next. You know, could he go into club management? Personally, I think he's really well suited to international management. And I think he'd be really well suited to a move upstairs within the FA and overseeing the next chapter. Probably deserves a rest, get out the public eye for a little bit. Who knows? Whatever he does, he has a fan in me. That's not changed just because I think he was maybe caught short a little bit this tournament tactically, maybe didn't utilise his players the best way, maybe had a change room that he couldn't ultimately handle. You know, he wasn't brave enough to drop Harry Kane earlier in the tournament when he clearly was off it, and he had to admit that afterwards. Was he prepared to move Phil Foden, you know, into different positions or even drop him because he didn't really get enough out of him? I think we all started to accept a level of performance that was actually quite lower than we should have. Like, Phil Foden had what I would say is one good half of football against Netherlands. Someone like Phil Foden should be scoring 2-3 goals a tournament minimum. It should be like a Danny Olmo type impression left on the tournament, not, you know, oh, well done, you hit the post and you tried really hard against the Netherlands. And that's not me digging out Phil Foden. I think that could be said for a lot of people. You know, I'm a big fan of Saka, and I know he gets doubled up and 2 men on him and he doesn't necessarily get the support. He didn't have Harry Kane in the box to aim at. But ultimately, you know, he's not smashed it. What's he got? 1 goal and a deflected assist. That's not an unbelievable tournament. He would have done way better in an Arsenal team. You know, Harry Kane's got 3 goals, but come out with negative equity in terms of the way the English fan press and fans and press are looking at him. You know, who's come out of this tournament with a higher transfer value than they started from an England perspective? Despite us making the final, I would challenge that only maybe Mark Gay and maybe Jordan Pickford have come out with a higher value. Cole Palmer, actually, off the bench, you know, he's actually probably my player of the tournament for England, Cole Palmer, which is mad because he played about 45 minutes of football, didn't he? I don't know, it wasn't a lot. No one else has really increased their value for me. Cobby, mine, who's not done it any harm, actually. He's come in and done well. But the rest of them have either stayed the same or gone down, which is pretty rare for a country that's got to the final. So it's definitely the right decision. It's the right decision for Gareth. Doesn't deserve a lot of the personal criticism he received. Does deserve some of the professional criticism, in my opinion. Has had an amazing run. Is, and I do want to say this now, our best manager ever, which I think is a bit controversial because Sir Alf Ramsey won the World Cup. So maybe he's in his own little world, Sir Alf Ramsey, and we don't ever compare anyone with him until we do it again. But certainly if you're talking about every other manager we've had, he is far and above them. And that's not to say that what he's done is enough. It's more of a damning indictment on the poorness of what we've done since the 60s, to be honest. So we now need to go better. We now need to get a manager who wins us a trophy. Who that is, I'm very interested. If I was FA, I'd be going mad for Pep. If Pep wasn't an option, I'd be going mad for Klopp. If neither of them are an option, I think I'd just steady the ship a little bit, maybe have an interim guy in there. Let's not panic. Please don't put Lee Carsley in there. No disrespect to Lee Carsley. He could be a really good coach and a manager, but he's not had very much experience, in my opinion. And I think even though he could be very good, the reaction from the England fans would be negative because they'd feel like they've just got another yes man, another Gareth kind of 2.0. And ultimately, we need someone that shows intent from us to go and win a tournament, I think, at this point. Hasn't always worked out in the past with the likes of Capello, etc. But I think that there needs to be a message sent. You look at De La Fuente, who just won it for Spain. You know, he's had a similar upbringing through the coaching ranks of winning youth tournaments with Spain, and now he's won a major tournament. So it can work. It nearly worked for Gareth on multiple occasions. So I'm not saying Lee Carsley can't work. I think it's about showing a change in strategy maybe. I just want a clear message from the FA. What sort of team do we want to be? You know, if I'm a chairman of a football club, which I am, I can say to our manager, I want us to play this type of football, the England DNA, all these type of things. I'd love to know what that is. I'd love for a face at the FA to come out and say, look, this is what we want to be going forward. We want to be attacking. We want to be on the front foot. You know, I don't get the impression that's the case. We know they wanted to keep Gareth and they would have offered him another deal. And as much as you can't argue with where he took us to in tournaments and his performance on that front is amazing, you can definitely argue with the football being played. You can definitely argue with some of the decisions being made and the lack of substitutions at times, the lateness of substitutions. Obviously, he's put some subs on in recent games that have made a huge difference. But could we have not been in that situation first? Could Cole Palmer have started? Could Harry Kane have been dropped? You know, could we not have tried the Trent experiment so late on in a tournament? All these different things have to be looked at, have to be analysed. Let's not panic. Let's hope there's a proper review over at the FA and they look at some of those shortcomings and do what needs to be done to make sure they don't happen again. So ultimately, this video is a mixed message. Two things can be true at the same time, guys. Gareth Southgate can be a hero, a lovely, lovely man, a role model for the country and one of our best managers of all time. But at the same time, it can be the right time for him to no longer be our manager and he can deserve some criticism. And that's where I am right now. You know, very much balancing between those two things. Not on the fence, because I've made my view very clear, but thankful for him as a person and for his nature and the way he's guided us, but also hopeful that we can find someone with a different skill set that could deliver more than he's delivered moving forward. Let me know what you think about this, but ultimately, thank you to Gareth Southgate. I'm optimistic for the future. It's a talented young squad, and 2 back-to-back finals is really impressive, but ultimately it's 2 losses. And if you ain't first, you're last. So let's be first next time. You know, we've got 2026, USA, Mexico, Canada, and then the next Euros back in the UK and Ireland. So another chance to do something on home soil. We really should be picking up a trophy, in my opinion, in the next sort of 4 to 8 years. And if we don't, that'll be a mistake and it'll be on the FA ultimately because the squad is decent. Let me know in the comments what you think. I'll be getting my reacting to my Euro predictions up next, so stay tuned for that. Drop a like on the video if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe for more. Until next time, don't go changing.